Today we are installing M1 and M2 drive mode buttons on the steering wheel, just like those on M cars, M3, M4, etc. But we're installing them on my M240i, and this upgrade works for pretty much all G series cars with the base M steering wheel. This upgrade allows me to cycle through the drive modes on my car, including Sport, Individual, Comfort, Eco, etc. by simply pressing the buttons on the steering wheel. So they are functional, just like the buttons on an M3, M4, etc. And they look unreal. I'm surprised at how much they've added to the sporty look of the interior, and I'm just super pleased with the results. So I'm keen to show you the process. So we've disconnected the battery. We've then popped the airbag out of the steering wheel by putting a small screwdriver in from the sides into the two small pre-recessed dimples. Again, use a small flathead screwdriver. I put it in this way, turn it so that I'm pushing against the side of the spring. You got to feel around a little bit. It might take a few goes, and eventually the airbag will pop. Okay, so I had a problem with the audio when I was recording, so apologies for that. Just going to do a quick recap. Disconnected the tiny blue clips. Again, take it even smaller. Flathead screwdriver. Wedge it into the top of the wide part of the blue clip, and then gently lever down, and you'll see a little bit of movement. That'll mean the clip has come out. You can then pull the two blue connectors apart. We then have a small T20 key that we can unscrew from either side, which allows us to remove the paddle shifters and just gently feeding through the blue connection through the back of the steering wheel. With the paddle shifter removed, at the back of the steering wheel you can see another T20 hex key to remove, hex screw to remove, and of course the same on the other side. The next step is to remove the fascia off of the steering wheel, which we do by releasing the little clips up the top here firstly. Again, small screwdriver, flathead screwdriver. Allows us to remove the face plate and gain access. That gives us access to these four T20s. I like to be doubly sure that I've got hold of these with a magnet. We then take our new trim guard, place that back into place. Make sure it all lines up nicely. The way this works is it gets power from the existing harness. So we tap back in and we wire back in. We'll show you that in a moment. Then it has a small transmitter on it, and it simply transmits when either button has been pressed. And then we put so this basically becomes a sender, and this is a sender unit. So every time the button is pressed, getting power from the harness, transmits a small signal down to the control unit, and then when we install the control unit, that allows the M1, M2 buttons to control, and we'll explain how that works in a moment. So for now, we're just going to gently sit everything in place. So now we're going to take our M1, M2 buttons, and we're going to fit the M1 first, line everything up back into place. That should do fairly easily in theory. Just going to get that first screw started. Make sure the wiring is tucked in behind the horn chassis. So nothing's getting pinched, no wiring's getting pinched as we go. Again, just going to adjust the wiring in, out of the way, around the other harnesses. Make sure they're all tidy and happy. Now we're going to prepare the positioning of the harness. So the first one I'm going to run is the new harness, which comes off the M2 button. It's going to come around and intercept the original plug from the fascia. So when we remove the fascia, we unplug this little male clip here. We're going to plug the male end of the factory harness into the female end of the new harness for the M2 button. And then that leaves us with a new male for the M2 button, and we're going to leave that exposed. The factory fascia is going to plug back into that, and then we're going to do a little tidy of the wiring. The way I like to run this wire in behind the chassis here, the horn chassis, in behind the little vibration motor. That's the motor that vibrates your steering. And tuck this, leave this just sitting slightly loose on the edge here. Okay, like so. Now this is actually the little controller. This is the antenna that we mentioned, so I like to just tuck this into this little cubby hole recess that we have here. Like so. Okay, so now we have the M1, M2 button installed. We have the harness run around the outside of the steering, so it's out of the way. We have, this is actually the antenna that'll send the signal, so I just wire that around that into this little crevice. Then we have the new harness plugged into the existing factory female harness, so the male plug into the female, the other way around, sorry, the female into the male. That leaves a new male exposed. It'll go back into the fascia in a moment. We have the 4 screws, retainer screws, holding our M1, M2 button back in place. The new cover over the top of the fascia, and everything is just sitting ready for the front steering fascia to go back into place. That is the setup of the steering. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and refit the fascia. There's a clip at the bottom, which is the first one, to return. 2 clips at the top. And of course, the new harness has a new, and of course the new harness has the new wire. Just going to go back into the fascia. Same location as before. It's our fascia back in place. Now put the 2 screws back into the back of the fascia. Okay, now here we are, just doing a final tidy of the wiring to make sure nothing's going to get pinched. I'm just going to reverse the position of this clip out of the way so it's all tucked, ready for the paddle shifters to come back. Ready for the paddle shifters to come back into place. Now, while I was at it, I decided to upgrade the paddle shifters to these carbon fiber M style. So they look a little bit nicer than they did before. I'm just going to go ahead and thread the wiring harness back into the position. It can be a little bit tricky to catch if you've got big fingers. I'm just going to sit that in place. Now we're going to reattach the paddle shifter harness and then clip it back into its excuse me, and then clip it back into its retainer. Okay, now at this stage, reconnect your airbag and sit it back in place. Make sure it's not pinching any wiring or harness as it goes back in. Okay, next part of the installation, we're going to release the clip here. I like to put my finger in this little hole, give me a little leverage to form a gap, and then pop my trim tool, pop, pop. That brings this back unit out of the way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now flip the unit up, slide this harness out. It's got this gate on it. Okay, so it releases the first connector. Apologies for the lighting. And then go ahead and release the second harness connector here as well. You may need a screwdriver to do this. Let's see. About a screwdriver and failed. Next, take a flathead screwdriver, insert it into the top of this retainer clip that you remove from the bottom of the gear shift, and slide the actual harness out of the retainer. Put the retainer to one side. Now we're going to start to remove some wires. Now, first thing to do, hopefully the camera's picking this up. There's a little arrow on the top, and the arrow is pointing towards me at this moment. It's pointing this way, and you'll see a number 10. Number 10 is the first wire you want to disconnect. Now, at the same time, I'm going to take the receiver module. This is the receiver module. The receiver module comes with a set of plugs, and we're going to remove this little plug here from the male harness. We're going to remove the male plug, and we're going to set the receiver aside for a moment. Now, we're going to remove these wires one by one. We're going to plug them into the harness. Now, the first wire I've removed is wire number 10 from the top left-hand position here, and I'm just going to slide number 10 into position 1. Yep, 1, 1, 1. You should hear a nice clip, or it'll become quite strong. The next wire we're going to remove is number 12. The way you remove a wire is get one of these little punch tools or pick tools, slide it into the top of the wiring harness. I'm doing wire 12 now, so we've got 10, 11, 12. Push down on the top and push back at the same time. And you should just see it move enough that you can get your hands on the wire. And just gently extract it. So that's 12. So we're going to take 12. I'm going to plug it into position number 2. 12 into 2. Like so. And the final one we're going to remove is wire 11. Same process. And again, I'm just going to push the clip back up so it locks into place, the little locking pin. And then that goes into position number 3. So now I have 1, 2, 3. So now we've got 3 wires from the stock harness into the new male plug that came with the receiver. We're going to clip that back together. And then we're going to take the remaining 3 loose wires that came with the receiving unit. We're going to plug these back into the factory. So double check the wiring instructions that come with the kit, but the red wire will just slide back into position 10, the black wire into 11, and the yellow into 12. So I'm going to do the yellow. Actually, sorry, I should say I'm going to do the red first, red into 10. Just right over on the very side here. 10. Then we're going to do the black into position 11. And then we're going to do the yellow into position 12. And that's ready to reassemble. So we take the retaining plug and we're going to slide that back into the main harness, like so. That should clip. And get it open, ready to clip back in. And the main control unit here, the final step is to put a bit of double-sided tape on that and wedge it in. The final step is to put a bit of double-sided tape on the receiver and then mount it up out of the way, under the factory cover here. Now the way this unit works is, like we explained before, we've got a sending unit in the steering wheel that's receiving inputs from M1, M2. That, of course, is transmitting into the antenna in the receiving unit. The receiving unit is then communicating with the drive controller, and it's just as if someone's cycling through Eco, Comfort, Eco Pro. It's as if you're pressing the buttons on the controller, but it's basically just doing it with these three wires here. Simple as that. Okay, so here is the receiver unit, everything plugged back in, and I'm just going to place the drive control unit back in place, and I'm just going to go reconnect the battery and give everything a quick test before I complete the assembly. And then before I push it all the way back in, I'm actually going to reconnect the battery, give the installation a test, and then disconnect the battery again, reset the airbag, and hopefully we're completed the installation. Against me all day long, but I've been through the fire and come out alive, and there's no more fear in my eyes. Oh, now I'm rising, and you can't bring me down. You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. And my feet have come too far for you to tie them to the ground. You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at, and turn it back around. You can't stop me. Okay, now so testing the M1, M2 buttons. We'll see as we hit the M2 button, we're cycling through the Sport, Eco and Comfort modes. And as we press M1, cycling through. Working well. My time is rising, but you can't bring me down. Can't stop me now. You can't stop me now. My feet have come too far for you to tie them to the ground. Can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at, and turn it back around. Can't stop me.
You know what's coming, so be warned.